Firstly, tell us a bit about the Paramounts.
Oh, Paramounts. Well, in England, in the early 1960s, or even before that, actually. I mean, when you were at school, you wanted to play music. I mean, if you had heard Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis, or if you heard Lonnie Donegan playing skiffle, or you heard Little Richard doing One Bumbaloo Babalam Bamboo, you wanted to play music. And I came from a musical family and started playing, and while we were at school, we got together with lads in Southend-on-Sea, and we started the Paramounts.
Right. And what, in the end, brought about the demise of the band?
Old age, really, more than anything else. We retired in 1966, having sort of come to the end of our career. We weren't that old, I might add.
No, of course not.
We were only 19. But no, what it was really, Paramounts, as most bands, even, you know, the Beatles at the start of their career, you know, and they, you know, we probably started before the Beatles did, or when the Beatles did, as musicians or as players, but they, you know, they were still doing covers on their first few albums, weren't they? They were covering Carl Perkins songs and Chuck Berry songs, and we used to cover people's songs as well. We didn't used to write our own, and we found by about 1966 that, you know, we were covering Sam and Dave songs, because we sort of progressed to that kind of soul, or Otis Redding or something like that. You could go and see him at the Walthamstow Empire. So it kind of, life had caught up with us. We weren't the elite that knew about this sort of American R&B and soul music. We were all trying to be black men. And therefore it kind of faded a bit.
Yeah.
Also, it's just perhaps part of life's rich pageant and musical evolution that, you know, you copy for a while, you try and emulate somebody. I mean, I'm a great Ray Charles fan. I know he spent many years sounding just like Nat King Cole. Now he sounds like old King Cole.
When and how did you meet up with Keith Reid?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said there.
Keith Reid, when and how did you meet up with him?
When and how? A drug party in Islington one day. A friend of mine introduced me to this chap, and he said, well, this is Keith Reid, he writes words. This is Gary, he writes music. This was a very influential person at the time, somebody named Guy Stevens. I think he's now actually departed this earth and gone on to greater things, so it's worth a mention that he put Keith and I together. But as soon as I saw Keith's words, I thought, well, this is a bit unusual. This is something different. As soon as I looked at Keith's words, I thought I could write music to this, and I started to the first time I got them.
And he was always purely and simply a lyricist? He was never musically inclined at all?
Absolutely hopeless. Complete loss. No, totally a man of the pen.
For the two of you, how did the songwriting process work, mainly?
How does it work?
Yeah, well, how did it work? The actual method, the way you went about it. Did he bring ideas to you, or vice versa, or?
Well, you know, I'm a very flexible person. Keith Reid was never very flexible, and it's almost 99% of the time ended up that the words came before the music. But, you know, being a musician and sitting down and working out ideas now and again, when you come to look at a set of lyrics, you might have a little idea that's been floating around that fits with them. But basically, and I think this is, you know, not a bad way to do things at all, words came before music, in that the music that's written to most of Procol Harum songs is words first. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you get like an influence, and many times, you know, time after time, you know, the atmosphere of Keith's words, you know, and what's going on, something like Grand Hotel or Salty Dog, it just, like, you know, inspires you that little bit more than just sitting down and writing a tune.
Now, you advertised for musicians when you formed Procol Harum. Do you recall roughly at all what you're asking for in the ad?
I think that Well, we thought we had me. Well, we did have me. So I was singing and playing piano, and in fact, B.J. Wilson, who'd been an old friend from the Paramounts, was meant to be at that audition, and therefore we were actually advertising for guitar, bass, and organ. Nobody came on the organ, from the pure fact that, there was probably only, 5 people in London that had an organ, and most of them were working. If you had an organ, if you could afford to cart it round and buy one, then you were working. It was a passport to work, an organ, especially a Hammond. But we were inundated with bass players and guitarists at the audition, many of which I sometimes meet. Well, I can't remember them, and they come to me and say, "Hey, you remember I was at that Roebuck audition in Tottenham Court Road?" I say, "Well, no, I don't actually. But, hard luck." Or good luck, actually. It was probably good luck. Because the 2 guys that did get in on that Roebuck pub, Tottenham Court Road audition, actually didn't stay all that long, apart from Dave Knights, the bass player, who was a very, very fine player.
I believe you weren't all that keen on being the vocalist at that early stage. Is that right?
No, well, as I said earlier, I'd retired, and I wanted to be a songwriter. I suddenly thought, I've been singing for years now. I mean, I've probably been singing in rock bands since, like 1960. And we're now in 67, and that's quite a long time. Certainly be a long time in the life of the Spice Girls. So I had retired, and I thought, I can do better things than, driving round in a van and sleeping in, hovels. I'll become a songwriter, and that's what Keith Reid and I did. But nobody wanted to play our songs. That was the long and short of it. So we had to. So I had to take it up again. I actually had 3 options on a particular day. One was that my mum wanted me to go for the interview with IBM, which were a sort of a blossoming computer company. And I thought, well, that's not the way to go. Computers are not going to be anywhere. The other one was that Dusty Springfield wanted me to join her in her band, and I very much liked the shape of the organ that she had, which was the one that Cherry Wayner played on the famous Oh Boy series in Britain. But I did opt for the third option, which was to stick with Keith and follow that path. And Carly spoke there, because obviously IBM went down the pan. Computers became nothing. Dusty Springfield, nobody's ever heard of her since. And Procol Harum are on top of the world.
Did you have any specific musical direction in mind for the band when you formed it?
Absolutely.
Yep.
It was a very definite spiritual and gospel, something which was going to touch your heart, but at the same time had guts, rhythm, and socked it to you, It wasn't airy-fairy. I listened to a 60s album the other day, which in fact White Shade of Pale was on, and I couldn't believe the content of the rest of it. They were even like The Move and Traffic and the other bands, they're all talking about watching flowers grow out of lampposts and things like that.
Yeah, some of that stuff sounds really dated now.
We weren't into that kind of thing at all. We were actually on our own planet, I think, we were on Keith Reid's planet possibly, but we all matched up, and we weren't really, although we get associated with the sort of Summer of Love and that kind of hippie thing. Lots of good points there, but we weren't singing about flowers, I'm going to watch the flowers grow. We knew that you cannot watch a flower grow. That time was better spent doing other things.
Do you have any specific memories of the writing of Whiter Shade of Pale in the recording session?
I sort of vaguely remember writing it. because I lived with my mum then, as all good lads do. And I wrote it down there one sort of, well, it felt like a Tuesday or a Thursday, because if it had been the weekend, I'd have been somewhere else. But I used to tend to write on the piano at Mum's during the weekdays, early morning with a cup of tea. And I can remember getting the words from Keith, and I think I'd been watching, in England at that time, we had the Hamlet cigar adverts, which were based on the Jacques Lucier's Air on a G-string. Is my accent going a bit Australian?
Seems to be drifting in and out there.
Well, we won't worry about that for a minute.
Oh, that's all right.
Anyway, I was very interested in this Bach's Air on a G-string, and I tried to play it one morning and totally failed. But at the same time, I thought, well, it's not a bad idea, and I looked up and I put Keith's little lyrics that he sent me the day before up on the piano, and I just sort of roared away over the top and played away Bach-like themes in the background. Bach-like, I might add, because a lot of people always say, oh, it's based on this Bach tune or that Bach tune, which was not really true. And, in 3 or 4 minutes we were there. And when we recorded it, it was Matthew Fisher, of course. He brought the organ, the Bach-like theme that I had. He really brought that to the fore and was a fantastic player. And he was one of the people that we didn't find at the Roebuck in Tottenham Court Road, but we did find in answering his advert in the Melody Maker a couple of months later. And of course, without Matthew's organ part there, it would not have been as strong an idea at all.
After the success of Wider Shade of Pale, did you feel a certain pressure on you to come up with more of the same, so to speak?
Pressure? You wouldn't believe it. I went grey. Unbelievable. Spice Girls, just worrying about whether they're going to wrinkle up next year. They're nowhere. We had pressure like you wouldn't believe. I mean, we had to buy shoes. We had no shoes. We had to buy jackets and ties in psychedelic colours.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, we had to be. We were number one. We had to lead the fashion. Now, we had actually led the fashion because I was actually not concerned with fashion and therefore had gone with the flow and had invented a lot of my own things, like growing moustaches and tying bits on one side or the other and wearing strange Chinese clothes. And for a brief moment in history, in Britain at least, that was actually the tops.
Yeah.
So I was probably the equivalent of a Spice Girl once.
Yeah, I guess. Do you think in hindsight you might have suffered a bit, the band might have suffered from having that success so soon in its career?
Well, it'd be very hard for anybody to handle that. I think we were as least prepared as anybody, but we weren't complete, doodly squats, dung poops. We weren't kind of lumps of dirt from the middle of Alice Springs. We had, actually been in bands before, so we weren't totally stupid, and we were, I had retired, and I'd come out of retirement in order to carry on a second career.
Yeah.
So, none more worldly, really. But, having said that, we weren't prepared. Nobody could be prepared at that stage to have put a record out in Britain, which, you didn't even... I mean, I did know where Australia was. I knew that it was the opposite. If I drilled straight down,
reach us eventually. There. Yeah, we're here.
And also, we're friends,
Mm-hmm.
We're all friends, Australians and Britons. We buddy about a bit, so we know where that is, and that's at the opposite side. But how could a record travel from Barnes in London to the other side of the world, or to Venezuela, or to Israel, or the Far East? We had no conception. We only thought of London, I suppose.
Yeah.
or Britain. But we got told it was number one in Paris. I think before it was a hit in number one in London. And that spread round the world. We were totally unprepared.
Now, Denny Cordell was your producer at this stage. I believe you already known Denny for a while before Procol Harum. Is that right?
Oh, just about. By a pipsqueak. No, not really, actually. Bless his soul. He's gone now.
Yeah. Now, you had a few lineup changes in your time. Was this ever unsettling at all, trying to keep some stability in the band?
You don't really... One thing about Procol Harum is, I mean, from my point of view, I'm not the grand... I mean, I may be the songwriter and the singer and the piano player, and everybody has to do what I tell them, but I'm not the big boss.
Mm-hmm.
Procol Harum has always been an outfit where people are free to put their input in. It's been... I mean, I think because of my experience before Procol Harum in the Paramounts, and that I sort of knew that people could actually play what they wanted within a context and show their virtuosity. And I think with Procol Harum always, with our recordings and especially with our live performances, that the people that have been in it have been there for their virtuosity. Guitarists and organists, well, not many singers, only me, have been there because they can add something in, and they've always been totally free to make their contribution. If it worked, they stayed. If it didn't, they didn't, and they usually stay. We have very few personnel changes really within Procol Harum. We stayed exactly the same band for 4 years, and then Matthew Fisher and Dave Knights left. And Chris Copping came in, who now lives in Australia, folks.
Oh, does he really?
Yep. Oh, yeah. He's moved there in '79, I think. Yep, Chris Copping is there. He's amongst you. God help you.
Eventually, after some reshuffling, Procol Harum was virtually made up of past members of the Paramounts anyway, so I guess this transition would have been a lot easier for you when you're working with musicians that you already had a rapport with?
Well, there's a little bit of that, but I didn't... Yeah, because, I mean, one likes working with people in, whatever walk of life you're in. You're going to enjoy doing it with people that speak the same language and that have the same sense of humour and the same values in life, if you like, for want of a better expression, as you do. If somebody came into a band like Procol Harum and said, well, I hate blacks, all I want to do is make money, and I'm going to get as much as I can out of the state that I live in, they would not be welcome.
Yeah.
They would not fit in, But basically, it's a moral, social atmosphere, and as long as you're playing like similar sort of music, then you can be in. Anybody could be in. Anybody out there listening could be in. I've had a good smoke there. Where were we?
Does that feel better?
Yeah.
Talking about the album with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra, how that all came about.
Well, the album with the Edmonton Symphony was a concert, and they'd invited us there. It's a long chain of events. It started with the Salty Dog album. Somebody liked the fact that Procol, or a rock band, if you like, had used classical type strings on a track, which Salty Dog did. That led to an invite to a Canadian festival, Shakespeare Festival in Stratford, Ontario, where we couldn't go there and play one song. And we looked at our repertoire of 2 albums, which wasn't very much, or 3 albums by the time Salty Dog. And then Helters in Eye seemed one of the ideal ones to perhaps expand a bit and play with an orchestra and choir. And so we put the program together in Stratford based on that. I think somebody was there. Well, lots of people there, actually. It was a really fun evening. Well, fun. It was, we had tears in our eyes first time we did that, and somebody then said, let's do that again with in a big symphony orchestra in Edmonton. So it went ahead, and it was just a concert, and I think about, not very long before, 4 or 5 weeks before, we thought, well, hang on, we're going to play there with this symphony orchestra and play, these arrangements of our songs. Perhaps we should record it and see what happens, which is what we did.
One of your later albums was produced by Ringo Starr, is that right?
Yeah, you've totally missed out Chris Thomas there.
Chris Thomas, oh.
Well, Chris Thomas, he came with this very... I'm not meaning to preempt your interview, of course.
No, go for it.
But Chris Thomas came in with us on the album before Edmonton as a spotty schoolboy. And we said, we'll give this boy a go. Let's work with some fresh blood. And we did on an album called Home, and then he produced the Edmonton album and about 3 or 4 after that. And he's gone on to produce, myriads of things, made more money than I could shake a stick at.
Doing very nicely indeed.
I mean, is In Excess one of your Australian bands?
Yeah.
Well, Chris produced them. He's turned out to be a fine producer, and I hope that we in some way helped him on his way there.
I'm sure you did.
As a spotty schoolboy. But, we did mess him out, really.
Oh, well, we'll put him back in there. Now, Lieber and Stoller, they produced one of your later albums. I guess an unusual choice, too. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, we'd been with Chris Thomas for years. It seemed like years. In the same studios, in Air Studios in London, which, although it's a brilliant studio, had become a bit boring to us. After being in there for about 4 albums and with the same guys, and we thought we'd have a change. Mm-hmm. The thinking behind it was threefold. One, Lieber and Stoller were actually happening at that time. They'd done a Steelers Wheel album in London. We absolutely worshipped them as songwriters and producers from their work with Coasters, Drifters, Elvis Presley, you name it. And we thought, well, songwriters and producers producing Procol Harum, they're going to appreciate what we're doing a little bit, and it could be a good coming together. So we signed up with them.
You found problems over the years with your solo work being constantly compared to Procol Harum?
Oh, no, not at all. No, people always seem to take it fairly separately. No, I've never had that.
Not a problem. Oh, that's good. Must have been a great feeling to be... No,
I think people have... thank God, people have had due respect and consideration and thought, well, there's Procol Harum and Gary Brooker goes out and does something on his own. Yeah. It's going to be slightly different to his normal track.
Oh, that's good, because that's rare, because often that can be a problem with people.
No, I've not had a huge success with solo albums, worldwide sales-wise. Very hard to say. But I've always been very happy with what I've produced and come out with, and the fans out there have also been likewise placated.
Now, getting the band back together and going back into the studio in '91, it must have been a great feeling.
Well, it was, exciting. It was, strange that it came about. It came about when I was at a bit of a loose end. I had several projects I thought I might do. One, going to make a new solo album, or make a new Procol one, or go off and do something entirely different. And I spoke to Reid about it, and he said, well, let's see what songs we can come up with between us, and see if it works. And if it works writing-wise, then that can be a good basis for a future, for a project. We got together writing, and it worked well. And that sort of organically grew. Once we'd written a few songs between Keith and I, we said, what about old Fisher, who used to play the organ, who was also a very fine writer, Yeah, let's get him in. Let's do a few more. And we did that and asked Matthew, and he wanted to do it. And in fact, we asked Robin Trower as well, and he was fine. And he came in and had a go as well.
There were no feelings of tentativeness or worries or concerns that you may not be able to capture the feel again?
Well, it was more a question of doing it and see if one had captured a feel.
Yeah, right, and see.
There wasn't worries about it. No,
Yeah.
If you worried about it and thought, well, we won't do it because we might not capture the feel, then you'd never know.
Yeah. Yeah, best
But
of luck.
we thought we'd have a go, and we did it, gradually, with writing and playing, playing in the studio. And it worked out fine. We thought, hang on, this sounds like Procol.
It certainly does.
All you had to do was have the right elements together, and it sounded like Procol. I mean, it's obviously a very difficult thing. I mean, I think it was about a 15-year break between albums, which is a long time by anybody's standards. In fact, nobody's ever waited that long. There must be, we must have been stupid. Frank Sinatra never left 15 years between the albums. The Spice Girls probably won't either.
I doubt it very much, yeah. Also about your work not too long back with the London Philharmonic.
Well, often called the London Philharmonic, but in all fairness, I have to say that it's the London Symphony Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry to put you right there, buddy.
Oh, that's okay. I can handle it.
Yeah. Pretty tough down there, eh?
Oh, it can be tougher.
Fighting off those snakes and black widow spiders, whatever you got under your front porch. But that was pretty easy. All you have to do is that album with the London Symphony ended up like as if it was a Procol Harum album.
Yeah.
But it was not meant to be that. It was like a pure invitation from a record company, BMG Classics, to produce, from my point of view, Gary, can you produce us an album of Procol Harum symphonic music? I said, well, yeah. Yeah, I can see, extensions of our, range of Procol songs that can be done differently, with just a symphony orchestra, would be quite interesting to do. Which I went ahead, they moved the goalposts a few times and said, hey, you can't have Conquistador without drums. I mean, Conquistador without drums was so rhythmic, it didn't need drums, but they said put some drums on it, So it was a sort of a bit of a love-hate relationship in the outcome of the album. But I don't think that, I wouldn't want to put anybody off ordering that from their local liquor store or wherever you buy it.
Now, you toured with Ringo's band last year, I believe.
Yes, indeed.
How does that compare, being part of someone else's outfit rather than fronting your own on tour?
Well, if you're part of a band like that, you have no pressure. I don't have to pay anybody's bills. Which with Procol, I'm worried. We all worry about what the bills are going to be and whether it's going to, pan out as a financial exercise. You don't want to. We love going. I've always loved going out playing. Procol have played in so many places where the priority has been, let's get out there and see these people, rather than, hey, how much are we going to make? We've always played in places, in Iceland and Poland and strange places where nobody has feared to tread before. So the financial aspect has never been that important. Just because, my wife's very good at keeping a tight budget, and we just eat string and recycled paper. But, with Ringo, of course, you're on a first-class trip.
Yeah, sit back and enjoy the ride.
I deserve it. Yeah. But we had a great tour with him last year. I was part of the All-Stars with Jack Bruce on bass, Peter Frampton on guitar, Simon Kirke on drums, and Ringo on drums, 2 drummers. I mean, that's like, musicians love that, 2 drummers behind them. Although we always say we don't like drummers, we love them really, and to have 2 of them behind you is a great power. And we thoroughly enjoyed it. In fact, Ringo wants to go out again and do it. Where are we now? 1998? Yeah, this year. And hopefully we'll come to Australia and with Ringo Starr and his All-Stars.
I did hear a word.
Sort of lineup.
I did hear a word that might be happening. Yeah, that'd be terrific.
Oh, you heard about it?
Yeah, I did hear that they were contemplating coming down here. Yeah.
Oh, well, contemplating. Yeah.
That would be good.
Yeah.
So what sort of music are you listening to these days, Gary?
So you wouldn't get just Ringo, see?
No.
You get Gary Brooker, and you get your Procol Harum songs, and you get your Jack Bruce, and you get Cream songs, and you get your Pete Framptons, and you get a real whole lot of different things.
Top show. What sort of stuff are you listening to yourself these days?
Oh, mostly traffic, aircraft noise.
Music-wise?
Clay shooting. Yeah.
I asked for that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Music-wise, what are you listening to?
Oh, God, you got me here. Big Faye Lovsky fan. She's Dutch singer. Christmas big plays were sort of All Saints. But generally speaking, I don't hear an awful lot. You have to pick and choose with your new acts.
Yeah.
What you're going to put on, because otherwise it might mentally disturb somebody of my gentle disposition. Very careful. I'm not a great fan of. I think music has always had something to do. It has had, some sort of deliverance, even over the last 500 years. Over the last 500 years, most of the stuff that we've been left to listen with has been governed by religion or by the money that could pay for it to be written.
Yeah.
Like kings and dukes. Unfortunately, we aren't left with the folk songs that people must have written. We are left with the inherited music of different styles of countries, and I'm not all that familiar with the heritage music of Australia, actually, as we speak. But I'm sure that your good station down there might send me a copy of some good Avo music, if there is any.
Oh, there's plenty. Yeah, we'll see what we can do there.
Well, I'd love to. All we've got here is Buddy Rolf Harris, That's all we know.
Rolf hasn't had a profile down here for a long time.
If there's more, let's hear about it.
Yeah. Okay, Gary, look, I won't hold you up any longer. It must be getting near dinner time for you down there. Up there, I should say. Just to finish up, plans for 98, and what's in the wind for you?
Well, you're a very nice person. Thank you for putting up with me.
Yeah.
And are we on radio?
No, we're not live. It'll be going to air in a few weeks.
No, we will be one day.
Oh, yes, it will, yes.
Well, I'd like to say a very prosperous 98 to everybody that's listening in Australia there, to this station, this fabulous station. And that we'll just remember to get your computers set up for the year 2000.
Yes, it can be a problem.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Gary.
Well, we'll say cheerio then.
It's been a treat talking to you. Thanks for many years
I'm sure.
many years of musical enjoyment. And hopefully we'll see you down here sometime in 98.
Well, that'd be good fun.
It would be. Okay, all the best.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.